Man, that looks good, doesn't it?
Looks real good.
Our logo, of course, looks great, but it's the Sonic Love, the needle, that whole thing up, Slick Watt's name, Calabro's name right there in the middle.
Kemp, Gus Williams, I like it.
We're faking Sonics a little bit today because we had a chance. You can check it out on the podcast page, and please do it on the Bob and Groz page there at 710, or is it mine? What do we call our website now?
710sports.com. If they're watching this, they're on the website.
Oh, good. So So perhaps you've already seen it there, for that matter. But if you want to hear our conversation with Gary Payton, we just had a great time catching up with the glove. Goes into the Hall of Fame officially on Monday. It was interesting to talk with him and sort of hear the story of how he found out.
Yeah.
And then kind of hear Gary. I mean, it's funny with Richard Sherman in the news and everything like that. Gary, kind of the original mouth of Seattle. You could sense a little bit of reflection in him and feeling a little odd at this whole thing.
Yeah, he was a guy who was trying to forget about the day, and in fact did forget about the day that he was going to be told whether he made it in or out. And he was in bed sleeping, and looked at the phone when it rang, and talked about
wasn't going to answer it.
Yeah, usually doesn't answer a phone if he doesn't recognize the number, but decided to answer that day, and it was obviously he was being told he made it to the Hall of Fame, which seemed an obvious conclusion for all of us. Maybe he's trying to be modest and not get his hopes up, but. We'd also heard sound from Mike and Mike earlier last week talking about the Hall of Fame announcement and them saying, yeah, you go to bed, you wake up, and when you think Gary Payton, as soon as you wake up, do you think Hall of Famer? And they were debating whether he truly was a Hall of Famer. It was nonsense. And the key to that whole thing was they were asleep. They weren't awake because he's a no-brainer. You look at his numbers, you look at his achievements, how it stacks up with others in the Hall of Fame. It's a no-brainer. I don't even really understand what the debate was with them, other than they probably didn't pay much attention to him.
Right, it was only them, because I think you look at guys in particular in basketball. If you're just going to do it on the NBA side, you're looking at what he did against his contemporaries and how he stacked up with the guys he played against. Only point guard to ever be Defensive Player of the Year, 9-time All-Star, 9-time First-Team All-Defensive Player. For that, he was a pro for more than 10 years, but for that 10 years, he was basically the best defensive player in basketball. This was an easy, no-brainer choice for the Hall of Fame. Couldn't happen to a more deserving guy. It's a great story, too. I mean, coming from a real tough upbringing in Oakland, bringing it up to Oregon State first and playing there. Coming here where remember what he couldn't do when he came here? He couldn't shoot. He could do everything else but shoot, and watch him become the player he became. Plus, moving on, getting a championship ring, being a part of that. That's the quintessential Hall of Fame career.
Well, and look at who he played against in his era. You're talking about Michael Jordan, Stockton, Malone, Olajuwon, Barkley. You're talking about guys in the top 50 greatest ever. He played against all those guys, right?
And represented, man.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who didn't play in a down era or achieved a bunch of big numbers against slouches. He played in an elite era, and he was an elite player. So well deserved, and great to catch up with him.
Love the glove.